This is Caffeinated Risk, the podcast for security professionals by security professionals. Here are your two self-proclaimed grumpy security guys, Tim McCreet and Doug Leese.
Welcome, folks, to Season 5 of Caffeinated Risk. Our next podcast guest is Patrick Hayes, the Chief Security Officer and Field CISO for Third Wave Innovations. He's also the author of a brand new book, Integrated Assurance, Unified Risk Strategy. Patrick is a recognized strategist and operations leader, certified enterprise security architect, and technology executive with over 2 decades of experience driving innovation, growth, and resilience in the IT and cybersecurity sectors. Throughout his career, Patrick has founded or scaled multiple startups and has spearheaded global expansion strategies across North America, Latin America, and Europe. He's the creator of Integrated Assurance, Unified Risk Strategy, and the Integrated Assurance Maturity Model, frameworks that have helped modernize cybersecurity, governance, and operational assurance across global enterprises. And now, let's check out our latest podcast with Patrick Hayes. Welcome, everybody, to our next episode of Caffeinated Risk. And for this episode, we're talking to Patrick Hayes. It's nice to have you on the show. Thanks so much for taking time.
Hey, guys. Good to see you.
So I want to start off we were chatting before we turned on the record that it's been a while. So I kind of wanted to let the audience know a little bit more about where you are today and where we started catching and connecting. Man, that feels like a lifetime ago. That was a long time ago. But I'll let you start first, where you are today. And I want to get your book as well. But let's start with where you are today.
Yeah. So today I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for a company called Third Wave. We do a lot of work in the security strategy and the attack surface management space. So we work from smaller customers all the way up to large enterprise organizations where, we don't just look at MDR. We actually look at the entire internal attack surface, where we look for things like standards, operational standards, security standards. What you're doing from a network and application perspective, look for drift and things like that. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool adventure, and it's got me all the way over here in Boulder, Colorado. So I still kept my Canadian accent.
I was going to say thank you for that. We appreciate that. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Didn't bring my Tim Hortons cup, but next time.
Yeah, next time. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much. It's been, because you were before that, I had to trace this back. When we first met, that was way back in Allstream, right? That was Allstream, I think, was when we first started connecting. So,
yeah. The security gang, yes. Right? So we're 3 of 5, right? Unfortunately, Pete's no longer with us, and Yanni's out on the West Coast, but. Yeah, we met probably, I want to say it was 2005, Tim.
Yeah, I think it was back then. Yeah.
And we were still grown men, right?
Yeah, 20 years later, right? I don't.
20 years later.
I don't feel like it should be 20 years later, but it's been 20. Wow.
And 20 years later, how come we're still talking about security problems in organizations?
Yeah,
I just came back from B-Sides Edmonton, and I spent most of the day in one of the tracks, just talk after talk about AI and different kinds of risk. And most of the presentations were pretty current, pretty relevant stuff. I mean, it's a super new field. But, one thing that was dawning on me, and you've got 2 papers out on AI risk now.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they're a must read, but you'd be silly not to read them because they're really well done.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah.
But what really struck me is we've got all this talk about prompt injection and data poisoning, and it's like nothing's changed in the last 25 years. SQL injection was a thing when we started charging people to pen test websites 25, 30 years ago.
Yep.
And it's the same design flaw.
Yeah.
How did we go global with something that was already broken? all the research you've done, have you found something AI solution-wise that is designed not badly?
I have yet to find something that is not designed badly.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys, and you guys know this, right? So humans are humans, and so humans are always going to do stupid ass human things.
Yep.
The sad thing is that executives are humans, and just like we did in the early days, it's like, oh, hey, in the oil industry, let's deregulate. Wow, let's flatten all our networks and save a whole bunch of money. Oops, that was a really bad decision for our OT networks, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening in the world of AI. It's like, how can I get, faster response times, better customer service? How do I lower my overhead and lower my staffing costs? And, they throw caution to the wind, and architecture's left on the front door, ringing the doorbell going, hey, there probably is some design requirements here. There likely should be some governance. And the vendors aren't helping, right? The vendors are trying to bring this stuff to market as quickly as possible so that they can maximize or at least break even on their AI investments. Mm-hmm. The problem is that it's introducing this whole new attack plane that businesses are just not even ready for, right? And one of the papers that you referenced, Agentic AI, where I map the capabilities of AI to the MITRE ATT&CK kill chain. Mm-hmm. And we're not there where, AI can actually execute full-on attacks through the kill chain on its own, but we're not far off either. We're probably 18, 24 months. And I've had friends say, oh yeah, save the FUD and the rest. But the reality is, if AI can demonstrate reconnaissance and persistence and lateral movement without human intervention, we're not that far away. We really aren't.
Yeah.
When I was going through the way you've broken it down, and I thought it was pretty well done, and I'm glad to hear it was more of a mapping exercise than I've seen this firsthand. I saw stuff yesterday and the day before at B-Sides Edmonton where examples of some of the stages that you were talking about were being demonstrated. So I don't think it's fanciful at all. I went to sleep last night thinking, do I even want to get up and go back to security tomorrow? Because what I'm thinking now, like everybody here is using AI to save some steps, save some time, etc. Yes, you can't press the button and AI just goes and magically does all the steps. But if it's doing half of that work, I can either attack twice as many people as an attacker, or if I'm a criminal gang, I just doubled my workforce. Mm-hmm. I see this going one of two ways, and I'm interested on your take on this. Either there's going to be a lot more attacks, or once the human gets involved in the steps that AI can't do right now, they're going to have more time and agility.
Yeah. You're going to see a lot more nation-state sponsored attacks using AI, and you're going to see a lot more coordinated criminal syndication attacks is what I see. Well-funded, well-trained. Nation-state is the one I would worry about the most, right? So you think about back to the days of APTs when everybody talked about APTs, which is funny because they're still APTs, right?
Yeah, they haven't changed.
They lost their brand. Yeah.
They lost their brand. Yeah, they're old school. The reality is that that persistence has now been increased, 100-fold, because now you have the ability for you to train your AI models to move and shift based on how the organization communicates with the outside world, how they communicate with their customers. They can listen into your email communications. I mean, even back in the day when we were all kind of sitting in under the same roof, we did some internal testing around what were the most common words that were used within our organization, and we came back with test results based on you know, that whole that whole attack on the oil company. But now these things can be trained on how your organization operates. They can be trained on when your regular patching cycles are. They can be trained on when you do, DevOps deployments, right? They can be trained on your CI/CD pipelines. And so now they can move and shift faster than a single attacker, faster than a couple of coordinated attackers, because attackers they'll do reconnaissance, they'll perform, and then they'll pause. And then AI doesn't pause. It just keeps moving. It just keeps finding ways to hide itself. It just keeps trying to work its way into natural flow of traffic. Now, I'm not saying AI is bad. There certainly is from an attack perspective, but there are a lot of ways we can use it too on our behalf. The problem is that, state-sponsored and criminal attacks, they're way more sophisticated than most of the IT community, most of the security community is at this point.
Yeah, agreed. No, and that's what scares me, right? Is I have a chance to get through one of the papers. I still have the other one up on my screen, and what got me when you guys were talking is two things. Well, literally scared the hell out of me, but two things too. One is it's the scale now, right? The scale that can be executed, and the second is the precision. Where before we sometimes relied on the adversaries being a bit sloppy or the 12 gauge approach to finding as much information, but no, not anymore. Now it's more precise, right? You can actually target and specifically target and then narrow the scope of the target and then hit everything, but at scale. We didn't have to face that before. Now we are. And I think that's what scares me more than anything is the precision and the scale.
Well, you add to this, Tim, that organizations haven't truly improved their incident response procedures, right?
No.
A lot of organizations still treat security incidents in the same fashion that they treat an IT incident.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this. We were working with one government agency a number of years ago, and their environment had been infected, right? We'll call it APT, but they've been infected for 6-8 months. And it was because their IT team kept re-provisioning, re-imaging the infected laptops. Yeah. So we actually had to detonate the malware in a protected zone so that we could actually see what the malware was actually doing so that we could say, oh, that is an APT and you guys have been infected for a really long time. And actually, here's what's been exfiltrated as a part of all of that. Now, just imagine that through an AI-generated attack or through AI persistence, right? Now you've got sloppy humans that don't follow procedures or uncoordinated procedures, right? IT operations and security not working together on incident response because those are two different response types, right? One is get to status quo. The other is there's going to be a new status quo on the other side, and it's going to require some change management, and we need to fix the broken stuff that got us here. And that's the part, Tim, that scares me is that there's not enough visibility to executive management who actually own the risk for the coordination between their teams who are actually working on these things. And they're just focused on trying to support the business. We got to keep the lights on. We got to keep our e-commerce systems working. We need to be, transacting. We need to provide citizens with access to, to services. And security is going, critical vulnerability. And, oh, we got this over here. And IT's like, hey, we've already got stuff going on. And now add AI to that, right?
I don't see how this is going to get better. And normally I'm a little more optimistic about it. But
well, lots of vendors think that they have the solution for that.
Yeah.
The name of your book and the name of the business practice is Integrated Assurance.
Yeah.
I like the idea of assurance, but how does one actually provide assurance to anything? And you mentioned trusted channels in there a couple times, like this whole data poisoning and misinformation. How are we going to kind of level out of this turbulence?
Well, first of all, let's not introduce another framework, right? So my intention was never to introduce another framework at all. I was thinking of it more from a fabric perspective or a meshing, right? You think about from a data management perspective, moving to data meshing versus ownership of data all the time. I wasn't interested in competing with SABSA or NIST or ISO, because there's some really great standards out there. I wasn't going to compete with ESRM because there's really great guidance that exists in silos. Mm-hmm. What doesn't exist is the weaving together of how these teams operate together. I was sitting in a security operations QBR with a customer just, a few months back. And, it was a novel idea. The guy running operations said, I'm going to bring risk and audit into the discussion so that they can kind of see. And, one of the senior executives was like, what the hell are they doing here? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
This is the culture that we're dealing with, right? And so I think from my perspective, my book is far more about culture and collaboration and bringing teams together and then building that trust model that allows people within the organization to know that security is hard, but if we work together, we might have a fighting chance, right? Yeah. Like I've got good IT standards, you've got security standards and security practitioner standards. Audit's got their standards, and we have regulatory and legal guidance that's provided to us depending on what part of the world we're operating in. And then the business is there, hey guys, we're just running the company and hopefully it goes well. It's like, wait, you actually have strategy, and you provide the most important part of trust, and that is, if you believe that the business should run securely, everybody will believe that the business should run securely.
Absolutely.
I dropped into this one software company, and they're like, okay, so, we need to make sure that code that we're releasing to the market is secure. Our customers, they love it, right? Like they love what we do. And it was cool. They had a cool product and everything. And I went, you have a significant security flaw. And they went, yeah, we know.
Jesus.
And I said, okay.
All right, then.
So what are we going to do about it? It's like, well, I don't want to tell senior management. There wasn't even the illusion of trust that if they were to surface a critical risk, it would be like, oh, gee, Bob's a pain in the ass again, and he's telling about this thing, and it's going to. But the reality is that a significant impact from a breach or from an incident, a lot of these organizations, they think myopically too. It's like, okay, well, if we have an incident, we'll just clean it up and we'll pack it up and we'll recover, right?
Yep.
Now Ed publicly traded to that, right? So now you have an incident. There was evidence that you knew of the incident. It never hit your risk register. Nobody's ever made a decision on whether to do something or not do something about it. It impacts your share price. So let's say that you go from $7 to $3 for an extended period of time. Well, you could actually be hit with a shareholder class action lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I was talking to one business executive and he said, no. I'm like, yeah, actually, read your shareholder agreement, right? If there was something that you knew about and it was significant and you didn't disclose it, or if you didn't have a plan or you didn't at least manage it in your risk register, you could actually now face a class action lawsuit from your shareholders because you actually didn't predict that. You didn't share it with them. And that was now their risk. You've transferred your risk to your shareholders.
Yep.
And they didn't have a say in it, right? They're assuming that you're managing your risk. Now, let's not even talk about security insurance or cybersecurity insurance. But the reality is that these organizations, they'll subscribe to an MDR provider, they'll buy cybersecurity insurance, and then they'll just say, well, that's my liability. I've outsourced it. We're good.
Yeah.
Not thinking that it's like water on a lake. Today's a windy day, and guess what? You put your sails in because it's going to be choppy waters. They don't even think about stuff like that. It's just like the threat landscape never changes. The threat landscape changes every damn day.
Yes.
Agreed. And that's the scary part is I really like this because years ago I remember doing, I did do a stint as an auditor, so I remember doing some audits. And, when we asked for questions about materiality, right? What's the level of materiality that I'm going to live with, or what can I live with from a material perspective? Yeah. And the best answer I got from one executive was $0, not $1. And I'm like, I looked at him and said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, no, we can't, because of our company, because of what we do, or because of the work that we do, we can't afford it. So we can't accept any level of material misstatement. Awesome, let's go to work. And it was the first time I actually heard of an executive, this is 20-some years ago, where an executive said, I appreciate and understand the impact of what this could be. Mm-hmm. And that's way before, some of the cool stuff we've been dealing with the last 20 years. But that stuck with me, right? And I think you're touching on that, is this idea that an organization isn't just the nuts and bolts that make it up. It isn't just the data and the software and everything else that comes together. It's the cultural approach that you take to recognizing what that risk is. What am I going to do with it? And then how do I focus on, if something happens, how do I bounce back better? And that's what I like about it, right? Is that you're getting to the space where, can I get the human involved in the equation? Because Jesus Christ, we haven't done that well the last 40 years. I had to count back 44 years now in security, and we have not done humans well in security, right?
No, because, humans will make bad decisions.
Yep.
And humans are humans, right? I've had lots of friends in the security training industry, and they're like, well, we'll just train it out of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Humans are humans, right? Humans have human days, right? You have little kids and it's distracting and something happens with your car. There's, maybe there's like bad weather and you got to deal with your home insurance, and an attacker calls and you just want to get the damn phone call over with. And you didn't even think, oh, geez, what did I just give that person, right?
Yep.
They prey on the fact that we're humans, right? And they train themselves to treat us like humans. And so you're right. Like we just can't take that out of the equation. Now extend that trust from your organization, right? Your insiders. Extend that trust to your suppliers now, because we rely a lot on suppliers these days for everything. Mm-hmm. How much modeling happens in the supply chain? Not a whole lot, right? Now imagine the HVAC company that, was the leaping off point for Target. And I'm going back, but just because I don't want to call out anybody recent, right? It's like, now imagine that with AI, right?
Oh yeah.
Or, hey, I've outsourced all my stuff, all my security monitoring and threat management to an MDR company, an MSSP. And they've just implemented autonomous SOC.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you sign up for that? And what's their threat tolerance for things that happen within their environment? And how often does their autonomous SOC make hallucinations in their decisions to suppress alerts, right? Oh, I've seen this, multiple times. Let's suppress it. Well, maybe you don't want to suppress every instance of Joe trying to, get into the environment and getting blocked or whatever. There's a lot of thought that doesn't go into how do you actually recognize these things as your suppliers are implementing things like AI downstream. Yeah. And what's the impact to you? And do you have anything beyond that damn checklist that says, okay, you have this. Thank you, CMMC, for giving me a pretty loose, guideline that puts the stake in the sand way back on the beach, right? But the reality is the waves are going to come in.
Yeah.
And as we all agree, compliance isn't secure. Compliance is a minimal standard of security because it can be regulated. And most of the time, compliance is only updated, every 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? I mean, we all worked in PCI. How often did we update that standard? Every 3 years? And it had to go rounds and rounds and rounds, right? Now, think about that in the government space, right? Because I've released software into the government space.
Yeah.
Those platforms are not the same as commercial platforms, right? They've been bifurcated from whatever the original source code is. You have a commercial offering, which operates at the speed of how many features can I get out so that I can increase my revenue. Yep. That's got its own problems. But then you've got the government space where they say it needs to meet standards. So I'm 3 years behind the market on any given software platform because those standards get measured and updated and whatnot on a slower cycle than the commercial market. Mm-hmm. And so, you have all these folks running around, well, the government's got it. I have institutional trust and they're doing the good things.
Yep.
But the reality is that most of the time what they're operating on is 3 years behind what commercial, what commercial organizations are operating. And I think people forget that.
Yep. And if you add in an election year, you're going to wait an entire year to do nothing because nothing will be done in election year, right? So you don't want to do that. So now you're looking at 4 or more. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, not that I'm bitter or anything. I'm just saying, just watch this unfold a few times. So yeah.
Well, and that's truly the reality, right? And back to this concept of inherent risk. Lots of organizations have different ways of approaching how they work their way through, this NIST CSF, for example. If I'm a government organization, I'm going to overinvest in protect because I need to let citizens know that, oh, hey, I've got you. We're protecting. We're out there. But, let's say I'm an oil company and I'm going to overinvest in self-insuring myself, right? We'll increase our detection capabilities, and maybe protection is overinvesting, right? And maybe we'll focus on detect and respond. Mm-hmm. And I think for non-security people looking at kind of how this whole thing operates, it's a completely different language, right? You get into a conversation and they're like, what, really? So that not everybody's doing all the same things, at the same level across all pillars? No, and actually they shouldn't do the same things across all pillars because their business may not warrant it, right? So you don't necessarily need to be at a maturity level of 5 for protect if you really don't offer e-commerce services or services to citizens or something like that. But if you're doing B2B banking through non-commercial networks, maybe your detection and response needs to be a lot higher so that you can detect and respond to fraud faster. But maybe you don't need to have as much protect on the front side. And I think, like I said, you get into these conversations with executives or non-security folks, and they're like, what? I thought we needed to be at, CMMI level 3.5 across all of this stuff. And the reality is, no, you just need to have the right level of things in place to meet the needs and the strategy of the business. Mm-hmm. And your executives need to say, yes, I agree with that, right? And this is acceptable.
Yeah.
And it makes it really tough for us in the security field, right? I responded to a post just the other day on LinkedIn, and the guy says, well, security, we're always behind the 8 ball on whatever. And I'm like, the reality is that security has, or a CISO, for example, they have all the authority or all the perception of authority, but no real authority to do it. And the reality is that we're trustees, we're custodians, right? Yep. The authority lies in the executive who owns it.
That's the mindset change that hasn't occurred yet, right?
Yes.
Is that I've sat on those chairs for enough years that, this idea, and I used to test this theory all the time. And you guys heard of this, for the acceptance of risk. Tim, can you just sign off on this? If I don't, are you going to stop? Oh, no, the website's already launched. Awesome. So I'm not the guy. Yeah. Let's go find the guy. And we would then have those discussions. And it just became, to me, that was always my litmus test. If you're telling me I have the authority and accountability and I'm responsible for this, awesome, then we're not doing it. Because my risk tolerance is 0. Like, you're going to get sock puppets and crayons and I want it back at the end of the day. But if you're telling me you're going ahead with it anyway, then why the hell are you asking me? And that was my biggest, that's one of the reasons why, operationally, I can't do it anymore. Right? Because you can't, if you're going to put me in this position without this concept of assurance or me finding a better path for the security program, then why am I going to quietly lose my hair and go grayer than I am today? It just doesn't make sense to me. But this is why I like your approach is, can I get the right people in the room so that we understand that this becomes an exercise of assurance?
Yeah.
It's no longer just checkbox compliance and I'm going to submit it to the government. We got them off our back. No, can you explain to me how I'm going to manage this risk across an enterprise and really manage the risk across the enterprise? And I think that's the part that's missing. And that's why I really wanted to ask about when you were writing your book. I'm hoping that this actually gets to a bunch of CISOs because, Jesus, we could all read it and learn from it. But the idea of, can I get to the point where I focus on assurance? I'm not focused on compliance, and because get that out of your head, it's not compliance anymore, right? We got to focus on assurance.
Well, that's funny, Tim, because when I was talking to the publisher, right, when we were kind of going through, so what is the objective of the book? Yeah. We have a lot of folks that talk about assurance, and they're from an auditing standpoint and from in the financial space. And I said, well, so this is not a new concept, right? For those of you that are around back in the days of the early Securus, we used to talk assurance all the time. Mm-hmm. And then somebody branded cybersecurity. What the hell does cybersecurity mean? Nebulous security, right? There's no, what does that term mean? And then government started, allocating budgets based on cybersecurity. And the thought of integrated assurance just went away because the market was too immature for it, right? Yeah. Which thankfully allowed me to trademark it. So I actually own the trademark now. But the thing is that, they were like, so what's the true objective of the book? And I said, the true objective of the book is to build a culture around assurance and the knowledge of risk tolerance, right? What is it that we are willing to accept and not accept as a business? And what's my part in that to support the organization? forget about, oh, should I buy a SIM or an XDR, or should I get, like what next threat intel tool should I subscribe to? Or it's great. Get all that stuff, but what are you going to do with it? What do you tie it to?
Yeah.
How does that actually map back to supporting IT? It's like, well, so you found a vulnerability. Great. I can't patch it because, first of all, it's the first patch in the wild. It's only version 1. It's not been tested. So our policy says we can't implement a patch if it's green in the wild, right? We have to wait to version 2. Oh, but also on top of that, we have a 6-week patching cycle, and we're 2 weeks into that 6-week patching cycle, unless it's critical, right? Are you saying it's critical? Well, I am saying it's critical, but I'm saying it's cybersecurity critical, right?
Yeah.
And instead of saying, okay, well, we've now hit an impasse, right? We agree to disagree. Security is going to come and thump you on the head with that vulnerability every week, and you're going to come back and say, policy says not in our cycle, and then you walk away, right? Okay, well, let's hope that we don't get owned. Nobody talks about the exploitation cycle associated with the vulnerability. Sure, it's a critical vulnerability. What is our understanding of how soon that vulnerability could be exploited, right? And it's a pretty critical missing component, right? Like if it's a vulnerability on a Cisco system, for example, or on a CrowdStrike system, that takes down your Microsoft environment. But let's say that it's a critical vulnerability, and we don't understand the exploitation window. What if the exploit is only 2 hours because it's so widely deployed across so many environments, right? Who's not a Microsoft customer, for crying out loud? I find a Microsoft exploit on a piece of software that every damn organization uses. I'm going to figure out how to exploit that thing in like 10 minutes and share it with all my friends, right?
Yeah.
So what is your exploitation window? Now, instead of turning around and having, IT ops and security go their own way, you say, wait a second. Could I change the treatment levels of that asset temporarily? Well, IT ops goes through their traditional operational protocols, and maybe I treat it differently. Maybe I don't change the classification of the asset itself, right? To say, well, this is much more important, and it's going to be now we're always going to treat that print server more important than any other time. But it's like, okay, if we're not going to take it off the network, if we're not going to segment it out, if we're not going to do something as a compensating control, then I'm at least going to have my SOC monitor it differently so that if there is anything that happens around it, now I can actually treat it differently. Maybe it moves from level 3 to level 2 or level 1, and we just triage it differently. We spend a little bit more time investigating things around it. Those are the things I'm talking about. Those are the simple day-to-day things that we can make each other's lives better around assurance, to say, okay, we understand you can't do something about it because that's just your objectives. That's how you're measured. We can do something about it, and we can change the treatment levels of it.
Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library of reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.